Most people have no clue that in 2023, the best way to make money on Amazon is not with...
Coming in at number 10, we have a spooky chapel. So this is terrifying. In Telford, UK, Pat and Diane Fowler wondered what was inside a square box seal next to a wall at the bottom level of their house. They opened it up and then they found a metal grill in their floor. Eventually, they went below the grill and found a totally eerie stone chamber that looked like an old chapel. It even had a crucifix on the floor. They then found that there was a staircase leading into a cupboard in another area of the house. Weird. Coming in at number 9, we have mythical creatures. According to YouTube channel Incredible News E3, some strange creatures were found in a basement of a mansion in the UK. Allegedly in the 60s in London, an old mansion belonging to a Thomas Theodore Merlin was being prepared for demolition. As people were searching and doing a final check, wooden boxes were found in the basement. Now inside these wooden boxes were what looked like alien and fairy carcasses. They now reside in the Maryland Museum. Now the museum does exist, but I'm calling fake news all over the findings. I'm sure that they were weird things in the boxes, but they to me look a bit like models. Coming into number 8, we have this picture. Okay, I'm sure all kinds of things are going on in medical school basements, but imagine being in a group of modern day students that found this picture. Basically, it's a group of classmates from times gone by posing with a corpse that they were using for dissection. Nothing like a good class snap. Reddit is an endless source of creepy basement story sharing joy. For example, check out this horrifying door one guy found in his workplace basement at number 7. Hi! No, absolutely not. Put it away. Firstly, why does it look like a prison door? And secondly, what the heck is that family dynamic? That baby is a creep fest. Wait, actually, they're all kind of creep fests. I don't want to look at them anymore. One Redditor wrote, "It looks like Leatherface got into arts and crafts. Texas Chainsaw Arts and Crafts Massacre." I think that's pretty accurate. Taking a sad turn for the next 2 points at number 6, we have mummified infants. How sad is this? In 2010, a woman in LA discovered a trunk in her apartment building's basement. In the trunk, she found loads of Peter Pan memorabilia and the mummified remains of 2 newborns. Weirdly, the trunk seemed to belong to a J.M. Barrie, the name of the author of Peter Pan. After DNA testing, it turns out the woman was a Janet M. Barrie. She basically identified with the author, but she wasn't any relation. But she had stowed the baby's remains away in the 1930s, and they'd laid there undiscovered for almost 80 years. Horrifyingly similar at number 5, we have 2 fetuses in a jar. In 2012, William C. Neff made a shocking discovery of 2 semi-formed babies preserved in jars. He found this at the basement of his home in Hannibal, Missouri. The discovery came as a result of renovation work going on in the building. After the gruesome finding, it was discovered that the building had been used as an illegal abortion clinic in the 1900s. Coming in at number 4 of the top 10 insane things found in a basement, we have a stranger. Like, hello there, and who are you, and why are you in my basement? This is very much a question that these Ohio State University kids had on their lips when they discovered a secret door in their basement that then led to a secret bedroom in which a mystery man called Jeremy was living in. Jeremy, what are you doing there? The group of lads thought that there was a ghost in the house that opened the oven and the cupboard doors, but it turns out it was Jeremy. This sounds way too good to be true. One museum found that they were sitting on a hidden wine vault, and that is coming into number 3. Researchers at New Jersey's Keene University discovered a hidden wine vault in the basement of the Liberty Hall History Museum. There were 50 bottles of wine and other spirits that date back 300 years, just like sitting there. The loot included a 1796 case of Madeira. Now this wine is known for its longevity, so it probably still tastes good. There was also a whole bunch of Cuban cigars. What a finding. Coming in at number 2, we have NASA secrets. Oh my. In 2015, a dealer was cleaning out a Pittsburgh basement of a deceased IBM engineer who worked for NASA during the space race era. So this was from the late 50s to the mid 70s. They found a whole load of NASA files on 2 giant computers. 93 of the tapes that they found had data about Pioneer 10 and Pioneer 11. Now these were flyby missions to Jupiter and Saturn. How cool is that? Finally, Coming in at number 1, this scares me a lot. Somebody found a dozen live sharks in a basement. Officers from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation searched a home in LaGrangeville. The authorities found a homemade pool in the basement filled with 7 live sand sharks and a dead hammerhead shark and other smaller sharks. The sharks were caught and taken to the Long Island Aquarium. Seriously though, who keeps sharks in their basement? No!
Starting us off with number 10 is the eye. Now this one was shared by Redditor JLKanga23, who said this happened when she was 12 years old. One of her mum's friends from church asked if she and some others would come over and pray all over his house. Apparently, as soon as he moved in, things just changed. His wife's personality changed completely, he had started seeing shadows himself, and his daughter just started acting very bizarre as well. Now their house had a storm basement that he'd never gone into because he always got an evil feeling from it. The group got to his house and the user's mum had brought her along because she was too young to be left at home. Now they opened the basement to find a bunch of ritualistic or voodoo-like symbols that had been graffitied onto the walls. Already that would have been a red flag for me. I would have been like, nah, B, miss me with that. Now there was one eye symbol that the user could never get out of her mind even till this day. And that wasn't even the worst part. Scattered all around the floor were dozens and dozens of dried out dead animals. I'm talking cats, rabbits, chickens, dogs, you name it, they were there. There's no way they had gotten down there themselves since there weren't any chickens in the town anyway, so someone purposely brought them there for whatever purpose. And clearly some ritualistic had been going on down there, so no wonder all that bad juju infected his entire family. I get it.
And at 9, the man and the girl. So the story goes that this boy, who we'll call Mike, was hanging out with his older sister and their friend Andy, who had come to visit. Andy was staying in the basement, so all the kids would hang down there and play video games. Once when they were playing, Andy heard a noise and asked if anyone else heard, to which neither Mike or his sister did. A few moments later, Andy and Mike both heard a noise which sounded like it came from a little girl. Mike's older sister dismissed his warning and said it was probably from the game. They kept playing, and about 15 minutes later, they heard another sound, like a nail dragging on a bench and then falling to the ground. At this point, Mike and Andy decided to go upstairs while Mike's sister continued playing the game. Shortly after, Mike's sister came upstairs saying she heard a man's voice and it wasn't from the game. It looked like she had seen a ghost. When their dad came home, he checked it out, said it was their imagination, and not to say anything to their mother because it'd scare her. He did, however, find the nail on the ground next to his bench by his workshop in the shed. Years later, Mike was visiting his new family home, and his dad was joking about the basement in the old family home. Upon hearing the story, Mike's mother asked why she never heard this story and explained when she was home alone, she'd seen the shadows of a man and a little girl in the basement. Ooh, spooky. Nothing happened to her, but she always thought it was scary.
Now,
Ebony. Download now.
They helped build my followers from 4,000 to 9,000 in just 2 weeks. Before I joined Social Growth Engine, becoming an influencer was just a dream of mine. And now, I'm really living it. Honestly, the best thing that's ever happened to my brand. And without SGE, I would not have been able to grow my account this fast. They saved me so much time, and I can now focus all my energy on creating good content. If you want real social growth, then click below or swipe up now.
At number 8, we have the dolls. And honestly, this one isn't even creepy because, oh, it was found out of nowhere. No, which psycho was behind this one? I feel like, no, this basement is intentionally creepy. Hanny's, a restaurant in Phoenix, Arizona, has a very interesting basement that probably makes most of their customers just lose their appetites. The owners are eccentric and strange in their own regard, but they installed an homage to the Last Supper in their basement. And that would have been fine had the installation not featured a bunch of creepy ass dolls. Like, why? Why? If that's what I find at a restaurant, I'm automatically gonna think about the food. Like, if that's what's down there, what are they putting in my food? that I don't know of. It just creeps me out. I don't want to be there. The whole thing's just very sus.
Moving on to number 7, the 2 jars. While renovating a property in Hannibal, Missouri, 2 workers made a gruesome discovery that shed some historical light on the property. William C. Neff owned the property, which he inherited from his parents, and told local news stations that he believes the homeowners before his parents ran an illegal abortion clinic in the early 1900s. Neff's parents bought the property in the 1950s, which is where his father ran his chiropractic clinic from. As William grew up, his parents would tell him about these jars they found in the basement, but didn't go into much detail. And for good reason. The workers who unfortunately stumbled upon the jars found 2 fetuses sitting in formaldehyde. When speaking on the incident, William said, "I know they did medical procedures and stuff. I was told they helped a lot of ladies. That's all I know." Referring to the old owners of the house before his parents.
Coming in at number 6 now is Benjamin Franklin. No, he wasn't found in a basement, but what a plot twist that would have been if that was a story. So back in 1998, a group of construction workers were doing some repairs in the basement of the house at 36 Craven Street. It didn't take them long to find more than 1,200 pieces of human and non-human bone in a pit that was 1 meter wide and deep. First of all, the hell going on with that? Archaeologists were called in to investigate the site, and they pinpointed the time period in which they think the bones were buried. They estimated that they had been there since the mid to late 1700s, and do you know who was the resident of that house between 1756 and 1775? Founding father Benjamin Franklin. And I mean, we know he wasn't a crazed serial killer murderer, so someone make it make sense. Apparently the bones are from an anatomy school that was run in the house, and the surgical marks on the bones backed that story up. But wouldn't it have been much more spicy if it was Benjamin Franklin's doing and he was a serial killer? We like a bit of juice.
Next up at number 5, the tombstone. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if I found a tombstone in my basement, I'd probably move out that same day and put my house up for sale. That's just some bad juju. Bad vibes. Not here for it. So the story here is Derek Kruk was exploring his basement and stumbled upon something he hadn't noticed before on the floor. After cleaning the area and wiping the floor of the dust and whatever else was on the floor, Derek realized he had discovered a tombstone in his basement. Was the house he was living in built on top of someone's body? Could it be haunted? So many questions, and I have all the answers. No. Derek called up some friends to tell them about his discovery, and upon doing some digging, no pun intended, they soon learned the tomb belonged to Jabez Hardin, who fought in the War of 1812. However, after help from local resident Chip Mangio, who did some of his own research, it was determined that this war veteran actually wasn't buried beneath the home. Chip, who is the head of a local charitable organization that helps assist local charities, inspected every tomb at a local cemetery until he came across Hardin's. Chip went on to explain Hardin's old stone was most likely given away after his new stone was created. He went on to say, gravestones travel. You'll actually find gravestones as part of waterspouts or walkways because they're still good stones and they're expensive. So at the end of the day, Derek can rest easy knowing his house wasn't built on a grave, but still knowing your house was made partly with tombstone, even if the house isn't haunted, the basement has got to be redone. Bad stuff's happening down there, I can promise you that right now.
Now number 4 is the painting. This one's from Reddit user Fonzie327, who said in his junior year of college he moved into a house with his best friend. They started moving their boxes into the house and put a bunch of things in the basement. Now the basement itself was basically this unfinished concrete square that contained a smaller room inside of it that had the water heater and other pipes in it. Now the boys started looking around and started checking out what's already there, and they found a huge painting in the smaller room. It's about 3 feet tall, and when they turn it around they see the creepiest thing ever. The painting is of a guy wearing a pink onesie, and the hood has bunny ears on it. He's holding a knife in his hand that's pointed at his own stomach, kind of like he's about to stab himself, and of course he's got the biggest smile on his face ever. Now I get art is subjective, and fair enough, I don't have the right to be like, that's creepy, but here's the mic drop moment we're waiting for. Now they realize the boy in the painting is being painted from the inside of the smaller room looking onto the rest of the basement. The doorway he's leaning on is exactly the same as the one in the basement, and so they were like, hell no, we're getting out of here, and they probably just broke their lease. That's what I would do, to be honest.
At number 3, the urban explorer. Our friend here, who we'll call Jeff, had a knack for exploring that which is now abandoned. I don't know why, but when things are abandoned, there's usually a good reason for it. And in this case, it was probably what this guy found in the basement. So the story goes, Jeff here and his pal Josh went venturing into an old abandoned farmhouse about an hour from their hometown. Rumor had it this farmhouse was once used for a cult, so you know things were gonna get weird. At first, when they walked in, Josh found a photo of the family who the 2 explorers believed used to live there. However, their faces in the photo were scratched out. Weird. As the 2 went downstairs, Jeff, making his way down the old creaky wooden stairs, would find himself going right down to the basement floor as the 5th step from the bottom caved in. It took a moment for Jeff to realize what had happened. He was standing in a basement with water up to his ankles, as well as cuts and a ton of splinters in both legs. The agonizing pain started to spread up to Jeff's torso, and he started to feel dizzy. Before he blacked out, Jeff surveyed the basement and believes he saw a face and some movement in a dark corner. Upon waking up, he found out that Josh had called 911, which was the right call. Jeff needed to be vaccinated, stitched up, and get the splinters taken out of his legs. To this day, he doesn't know what he saw in that basement, but I don't think he'll be going back anytime soon to find out.
Filling our number 2 slot now is the comatose woman. Back in 2008, a man in Austria brought a comatose woman to a hospital. She was in critical condition, her kidney was about to shut off, and she was on the brink of death, but her ailing condition wasn't even the most worrying part about the whole thing. It was the circumstances surrounding her admittance that really worried the staff. The man who brought her in claimed he wasn't related to her, and just showed up with a note from her mum telling him to bring the girl to the hospital. The girl's kidney wasn't even the only thing failing, her teeth were rotting, she was malnourished. There was a lot going on under the surface, and doctors were determined to find out what was going on. They didn't know it at the time, but the man was Josef Fritzl, who's been mentioned on the channel many times, one of the most notorious criminals of all time. He built a chamber in his basement, and after getting his daughter to help him install the door, he drugged her and then locked her in there for 24 years. In this basement, he raped and impregnated his daughter multiple times, like she had 7 kids while in captivity. His dumbass wife kept believing him when he told her the kids were just orphans that were left at their door. Finally, one of the basement children fell ill, which is when his crimes came to light and when authorities found another secret basement he had built, but thankfully no one was in this one.
And finally, number 1, the confinement room. Now this one really hit close to home because I had never heard of this story, yet it happened when I was 17 years old and in Pickering, which is about an hour away from where I grew up. So back in November of 2011, contractors working on an old abandoned home made a scary discovery in the basement. What was described as a confinement-styled room with a thick door and several locks was enough to start a police investigation. Reports claim the house hadn't been lived in since 2006, but this room looked as if it had been constructed within the last year or two. Detective Darren Short explained, "I can't get into what was in the room, but the way it was constructed, the time and effort put into it, and the materials used clearly indicated it was a room designed to hold somebody in. There was a locking mechanism nobody would be able to penetrate or breach. The previous homeowners had nothing to do with the newly constructed room, and police never did solve the curious case. So what were they trying to hide in there? What was someone trying to keep in there, really, is the more important question. Creepy. Scary. Basement I don't want to travel to, because that's a scary basement.
At number 10, we have It Chapter 1. This scene was in the original trailer for the movie, and it was this clip that really made me go, oh, I gotta see this movie. Let's take a look. The scene combines so many creepy things into one explosive freak show. You have a flooded basement to scare anyone who might have a fear of drowning. Then you have the rotted corpse of Georgie, and of course the horrifying Pennywise vibrating through the water like a rogue washing machine. And of course the basement is just the cherry on top of this whole thing. Like imagine the same scene was happening in a living room or a kitchen, there's like a fireplace going. It just wouldn't be as scary. You need a dark, moldy, wet, creepy basement to really send the horror factor home. Also, once you walk down to the basement, there's only one way out. So if that creepy clown crawls up to the doorway before you do, then you're gonna end up Clown Chow, which is also the name of the Pennywise themed breakfast cereal that I'm going to invent. It'll have marshmallows in it that are shaped like disemboweled kids. At number 9, we have Little Creeps. A girl named Samantha was looking for a place to live in downtown Vancouver. The rent prices were kind of crazy, but she was determined to live downtown, so she kept digging. She came across a basement apartment that was way cheaper than the rest. So cheap, it was a little suspicious, but she still wanted to check it out. And it was beautiful. This only made things more suspicious. She looked into reports about the place. Maybe there was black mold, but nothing came up. She decided that she was just lucky, and then she signed the lease and moved in. For the first month, everything was fine. But then she started to get these strange nightmares. She dreamt of a child laughing and running around her bed, but the dreams progressed and the child would contort and shift into this horrible shape, like all his bones were breaking, and then his eyes would sink into the back of his head until they were black pits, the creature would move closer and closer to her, and she would always wake up in a cold sweat before it touched her. Then one night, in her horrible nightmare, it got close and it bit into her face. She woke up screaming. She had a sharp pain all over her face. She then looked into the mirror and saw black bite marks on her cheek. It was safe to say that she didn't spend another night there. At number 8 we have Tremors. Tremors was one of my favorite monster movies when I was a kid. It's campy, cheesy, and has all the pieces of a bad movie from the 80s. And I think there's like 8 of these movies. Now, laughable as these movies are now, the Tremor creature I always found super creepy. I mean, look at this thing. These are giant slug-like monsters that can dig underground like moles, and they have thermal vision. And they also have those tentacle things that come out of their mouths, and they are hideous. There was a time in monster movies where they used real props, and they always looked slimy. It was so gross. It was just, ugh. Even just thinking about it grosses me out right now. At number 7, we have The Break-In. 2 brothers were home alone late one night, and they heard a crash in the basement. They assumed it might have just been something that fell over, and they figured they'd wait until the morning before they cleaned it up. Then they heard another crash, and it sounded like something was shuffling down there. They lived far into the country, so chances of it being someone breaking in were pretty low. It was most likely an animal. So they decided they would try and trap it and then set it loose. They grabbed a blanket to wrap around it and then a shovel to protect themselves. They walked into the basement expecting to see a raccoon or a possum or something like that, but what they saw was way creepier. They described it as a humanoid body, hairless, with long fingers that were almost like claws. They then looked at them, and then they saw its face. Its skin looked like it was pulled over a skull and had teeth that looked like they were filed down into points. It hissed at them and then crawled out through the basement window. And then it was gone into the night. They could never prove what they saw that night, but they never, ever forgot. At number 6, we have The Haunting of Hill House. If you are looking for a solid horror movie series, then you have to check out The Haunting of Hill House. There are so many little scares in this show that when I watched the recap to make this list, I found even more ghost sightings that I had missed from the first time I watched it. And the basement scene is one of the best parts. Yeah, being stuck underground with a crawling mummy coming towards you when you're 10 years old is one of the worst things I could imagine happening in my life. My sister told me there were monsters under my bed when I was a kid, and it messed me up for like years. I feel this kid's pain. At number 5, we have The Cage. A family's grandmother passed away, and they were left with her house. Instead of selling it, they decided they would keep it, renovate it, and maybe turn it into a nice summer home. They were gutting out the basement when they found a hidden panel. It moved a wall and revealed a secret staircase. This was strange. Not only did the family think they knew their grandmother very well, but the staircase seemed like it had been used recently. They walked down into a secret room, and down there they found a horror. Chained to the wall was a beast. It looked like it used to be a man but had been experimented on, like someone had sewn in animal parts to the body. It looked like someone had cut off the feet and hands and replaced them with hooves, stitched fur into the back. And the creature was gnawing on a piece of rotted flesh, and then it looked at them, and the eyes had actually been plucked out and the holes threaded closed. How long had this thing been down there? At number 4, we have Lights Out. This scene takes place right outside of a basement, so I thought it was perfect, and it's also creepy, so I wanted to include it.
Okay, I'll get her, I promise, come on! Right? Yeah!
Just look into that face. The eyes are ripped out of the head. You just see those black pits. It's so gross. And then it reveals the creature standing behind her. I love it. I haven't watched Lights Out in its entirety. It didn't really grab me, but this scene is definitely one of the better parts of the movie. At number 3, we have A Growling Surprise. Now this one isn't supernatural, but trust me, it's just as frightening. You don't have to be a creature from the other side in order to make people freak out. This story comes way of electrician Dave Corin. He was hired to install some cabling in a home in New Jersey. He went down to the basement and was feeding some of the cable through some of the holes he had made. And then he heard a strange noise. It sounded like a large animal growling at him. He picked up his flashlight and shined it through one of the holes that he made to feed cable through, and on the other side of the hole he saw a grizzly. All that was between him and 1,500 pounds of bone-crushing power was a few pieces of plywood. So he did what any sensible human would do, and he ran for his life. At number 2, we have A Quiet Place. Possibly one of the best horror movies in recent years. It's starring Jim from The Office. Who knew we would love him just as much covered in rags and fighting for his life? If you haven't seen A Quiet Place, then let me give you a quick breakdown. There's these monsters, they're nearly indestructible, they love to eat people, and they use sound to locate their prey. Emily Blunt had just had a baby and it's floating in a flooded basement, and then this happens.
What if you could make a couple extra $1,000s a month using one little app on your phone? Well, I want to show you what it is and how to do it. So this is the app right here, guys. It's the Facebook app. And did you know that while most people are using Facebook to see what their friends are doing or just chatting back and forth, myself and the students I've taught this to are using Facebook to make thousands of dollars per month. Is all you need is Facebook, which you probably already have, and one other little known website that's completely free, and you can make thousands of dollars per month, even per day, doing it. You don't have to worry about having your own product or website or email list or any of those things that people tell you have to do to have success online. As a matter of fact, if you come over to my screen right here, all you need is a laptop and a Wi-Fi connection, and when you follow the system, you can have success, just like
The tension is unbelievable in this scene. Everyone watching is like, oh my god, you gotta save the baby, but that baby better not cry. And you can feel anxiety growing inside you. It's terrifying. Just thinking about the scene gives me anxiety. Also, when I saw this movie in theaters, I got nachos as my snack, which is a terrible choice. The whole movie is people being quiet and just heard me like I had to take a nacho, put it in my mouth, and I would squish it with my mouth instead of chewing them. At number 1, we have a new home. A family had just purchased a new home, and it seemed like it was going to be the starting of a happy new life. But it didn't take long before things started going to hell. There's a husband, wife, and their 2 daughters that moved into the house, and it didn't matter who went into the basement, but they all felt the same strange feeling when they went down there, like something was watching them. The dad figured that the basement just needed to be spruced up a little bit, so he started doing some renovations. Late one night, he was working on the basement, he felt something strange. Not the feeling of being watched, but a feeling of terror deep in his stomach. He slowly turned and then he saw it, a tall, shadowy figure. It looked as if its body was made of a black abyss. He tried to scream, but he couldn't. He tried to move, but he couldn't. He was paralyzed. He stared into the endless darkness of this thing and he saw horrors. His family murdered, his own suicide, torture, mutilation, cannibalism, and then he passed out. He woke up on the floor of the basement and then ran out. His family was all fine, but that was the last night they would spend in this house. They never went back, and sometimes when the father sleeps, he can see the endless blackness of this creature in his dreams.
Alright, coming in at number 10 now, we have Joshua Rules. In 2015, a man took his brother along with him to go house hunting in Michigan when they stumbled across a dirty, wet, and unfinished basement. They saw writing on the wall, and when they took a closer look, they realized that a child used to live down there. One wall read Josh's Rules. Number 1, stop reading your walls. Number 2, no watching Isaiah through the hole. And number 3, no writing or drawing on the walls. Number 4, if you don't like these rules, go to number 0. Other messages said things like, don't climb into my room, or, and I think this one is the creepiest, stop watching me. The man posted all of these pictures to Reddit, where users came up with their theories ranging from schizophrenia to the supernatural. Very strange stuff either way. Next up at number 9 now, we have Satan. In 2015, Imgur user Bushi992 posted these pictures to Imgur of the basement and attic in the house that he and his friends had just moved into. As you can see, something went down here. The symbols appeared to be satanic in nature. There were pentagrams, rams, snakes, and strange messages on the wall, such as, for I am the earth, and within me the devil burns. Many people asked them why didn't they ask to see the attic and basement before they moved in. I think that's a very good point. I'm not sure if I could sleep knowing this stuff was below me. At number 8 now, we have the tape. Reddit user Lumberjack shared pictures of a small basement passageway that he discovered in his new home. Inside it, he found a locked door, which concealed an entrance to a small room. Inside that room was a briefcase and a safe. He opened that and found some money, a few watches, and videotapes. The tapes had writing on the front of them. One of them simply read, no, 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 no. He handed everything over to the police for investigation. Would you guys have done the same, or would you have ignored the message and watched the tape? I'm not sure if I could have. Okay, next up at number 7 now, we have the tombstone. In 2016, a student from Massachusetts made a grim discovery in their university house basement, a grave. Derek Crook was interviewed about the tombstone next to the boiler in his home. The message on it says, "This marks the burial site of Jabez Hardin, who served in the War of 1812. Now, he died in 1879 at the age of 83. At first, the housemates were very creeped out by this find, but now James actually quite enjoys shocking visitors to the house by randomly announcing there's a grave in the basement. Maybe that's just his coping mechanism. Next up at number 6, we have graffiti. In 2012, Reddit user Tallest Waldo shared a creepy discovery he found in his basement. This writing, accompanied by some very strange symbols. Another Reddit user identified the symbols as being part of occult spellcasting. They suggested this basement used to be a cult member's ritual workspace. After meditating on the symbols for a while, it seems they had an epiphany and wrote the message that we can now see on the wall. I can kind of make out something about their soul being fire, and the time has come to use the gateway they have opened. What do you guys think it says? I'm not even sure if I want to know. At number 5 now, guys, we have Peter Pan. In 2010, a woman in LA found something very disturbing in her basement. Wrapped in newspapers from the 1930s were the mummified remains of 2 newborn infants. They were wrapped up with a copy of Peter Pan and a membership card to the Peter Pan Woodland Club. Detectives identified who did this, a woman called J.M. Barrie, who coincidentally had the same name as the author of the book, but was of no relation. What police have never figured out, though, is the purpose of this. What did this symbolize? Was this woman trying to convey a message about her dead newborns and the story of Peter Pan's Never Neverland? We may never know. At the number 4 spot now, we have mold. In 2005, a family who moved into a new home were decorating one of the rooms when they noticed the bookcase was a little bit loose. They nudged it and it swung open to reveal a secret passageway. Inside, they found a note that read, "Hello, if you're reading this, then you found the secret room." The letter went on to explain how they were the previous tenant of the house but had to move out because of mold, which made their children very sick. The new owners who were reading this actually listened to the warning and moved out because of the mold too. They even sued the broker who sold them the house. I'm sure they're happy they got the warning, but I would be a little bit creeped out to find a note that congratulated me for finding the secret room. Very weird stuff. Alright, next up at number 3 now, we have the asylum. Now, not much is known about the picture you're about to see or even who took it, but I think that kind of adds to the whole mysterious allure of it. This was the writing found on the basement wall of an abandoned mental asylum. It reads, "I never knew much about people until I took one apart just to see how it worked." Many commenters online have speculated who exactly wrote this and if perhaps the story behind this message could lead to the reason the asylum was abandoned in the first place. Moving on to the number 2 spot now, we have drugs. Imgur user Boymers shared a couple of pictures from the basement of a house that he moved into in 2012. Now, the landowner had told him that the previous tenants were, quote, hardcore drug users. They didn't really see any evidence of this though. That was until they went into the basement. This was the sight they were met with when they arrived. It appears to be a message written in blood. The numbers 41 and 90 are large and prominent, surrounded by a bunch of random letters and the handprints of the people who made this. Other numbers on the wall include 82, 6 and 35. What does this all mean? Is this some sort of secret code? Whoever took the time to make this must have thought these numbers held some real significance, because it looks like they use their own blood. And finally, number 1 now, we have the bunker. Now for me, a bunker is basically a huge creepy basement with nothing above it. It's like a super basement. In 2014, an Imgur user shared a story and pictures from when they visited a friend in northern Germany. In the woods, they found an abandoned bunker. They followed the endless hospital-like hallways. As they ventured deeper and deeper, they found graffiti on the walls with words like die and help. Eventually, they came across a huge yellow vault door that had been ripped off its hinges. A worrying sight to see. What could have been that powerful? A little further on, they found the creepiest writing so far. A message in German that translates to, "Hello Satan, I love you." It wasn't long before they just turned back That clearly isn't a place you want to stick around in for too long.
In at number 10 with ghost children in the basement. A lot of people claim that their basements are haunted by evil spirits or ghosts that have unfinished business. Either way, it is extremely scary when you hear footsteps, screaming, or loud abrupt noises from the basement without any reasonable explanations. This is why when this happens, people install cameras with motion detection so they're able to get a notification when those mysterious and scary things happen in their basement. I stumbled across a really scary video of ghost children playing in someone's basement. Take a look for yourself.
When type 2 diabetes drained Tasha's energy, Crystal Run Healthcare helped her get back to living life on her own terms. Watch Tasha's story at crystalrunhealthcare.com/Tasha. The people of Crystal Run Healthcare. Changing healthcare, changing lives.
If this was me, I would never install a camera in the basement because I just don't want to know what's going on down there. But going back to the video, that was pretty creepy, so let's move on. Pet alligator bites its way into number 9. I've heard of a lot of people like to keep their pets in their homes, and sometimes they're kept in the basement. Why? I don't know. But this family isn't normal. On January of 2016, a repairman discovered a 6-foot, 200-pound alligator in the basement of a suburban home in Chicago. The alligator was their secret pet, who was sometimes taken out of his cage and put in the backyard. They had this alligator for 26 years without anyone ever knowing. The repairman was obviously stunned when he saw this monster alligator in the basement, so he called the police. They were able to remove the alligator, and the homeowners were charged with unlawful possession of an endangered species. I mean, is this real life right now? If I had an alligator in my basement, okay, actually let's stop it right there, because I would never have an alligator in my basement. But if I did, I would be fearing for my life every single day. I don't got time for that. I don't care that he's in a cage. They have insanely strong jaws that can easily break through like the little fencing. I think I would rather have a dog or a rabbit as a pet and not a man-eating machine. I'm just gonna put that out there. Giant torpedo fires in at number 8. It's normal for a lot of people to store their belongings in the basement, right? Well, apparently the previous homeowners was really into weapons of mass destruction because a family discovered that they had a torpedo in their basement. How did the realtor miss this one? Oh, don't look over there. Buy this house because of this part of the basement is safe. This is the good part of the basement. Well, they were a little skeptic that this thing was authentic, so they had a consultation with an army veteran who told them that it was used with either a motor or a lightweight anti-tank weapon, and that it was live. I mean, I'm sorry to say, but it is time to grab your kids, grab your wife, and get the heck out of there. Eventually, an explosive ordnance disposal unit came in to remove the deadly bomb. This is why you should get your house inspected, before you buy it, because there might be a potential missile in your basement. Okay, it's not likely that this will ever happen to you guys, but let's move on into number 7, and this takes us over to creepy skeletons in the basement. The internet broke when a story about a creepy looking skeletons were found in a basement under an orphanage in London. These scary looking creatures looked like dead fairies, werewolves, and aliens that were preserved in glass jars. Imagine seeing this. Their flesh had been rotting away, and some of their wings were nailed to a display board. To make things even scarier, there was also sketches of the Jack the Ripper victims next to the real human heads and other organs that were well preserved. These nightmare objects were discovered by a bunch of construction workers who were doing some repairs on the home. They found several thousand small wooden boxes that were tightly sealed. So imagine how shocked they were when they first opened up the box. These extremely creepy corpses belonged to Thomas Theodore Maryland, who was known as a prominent biologist in the 1800s. If I was working that day, I would run out of the house so damn fast, I would probably beat Usain Bolt in a race. And I would definitely ask to never work in basements ever again. It would be in my contract. So it looks like here you don't want to work in any basements. Why? Yeah, you don't want to know. A secret room makes its way into number 6. In 2015, a man bought a house for a really good bargain because the previous house owners had passed away and the house was slightly run down. After 2 weeks since he moved in, he decided to do some cleaning in the basement. That's where he went wrong. There was a lot of junk left over from the previous owners, and when he went to move a piece of plywood, he discovered that there was a secret hidden room. If you guys found a secret hidden room in your basement, would you guys go check it out? I know for me the answer is hell no. At this point he was a little bit scared to go in the room, but he decided to take a look around. He immediately saw a bunch of gun boxes that had been emptied and a safe that wasn't able to open. On the next day of exploring, he found a lot of ammunition and other military related items. During his search in this creepy secret room, he told the internet that he hired a locksmith who would be coming in the next day to open the safe, and that he would update his blog with whatever he discovers. However, he never did update them. He disappeared for a couple of years and just recently posted an update saying he said that he experienced some strange events and he no longer lives in the house and has no intentions of telling anyone what he found in that safe. So I don't know what was in there, but if I found something scary, I wouldn't tell no one either. Locked in at number 5 is an underground prison. This story shocked the world when Ariel Castro was arrested for keeping these women imprisoned as sex slaves, and he kept them in prison for over a decade in his basement. Each of these women were kidnapped after they accepted a ride from him. This is why you don't take a ride from strangers. He drove them to his house, lured them inside, then he took them to the basement and restrained them. They forced them to use plastic toilets that weren't emptied often. They were fed only one meal a day, and they could only shower twice a week. The girls kept diaries of their horrific experience, and they would talk about the abuse, being locked in a dark room, chained to a wall, and someday returning to their families. On May the 8th, 2013, he was charged with 4 counts of kidnapping and 3 counts of rape. He pleaded guilty and took a plea bargain, so he was sentenced to life plus 1,000 years in prison without the possibility of parole. But 1 month into his sentence, he actually committed suicide by hanging himself with bed sheets in his prison cell. Teenage boy held captive in a basement sadly comes onto this list at number 4. Armando de Andrade disappeared when he was only 16 years old, but he was discovered by police 20 years later. He was being held captive for 20 years in the basement of his father and stepmother. There were no windows or light fixtures, and when police found him, he had a beard that is grown down to his knees. He also had very long fingernails, severely malnourished, and was extremely traumatized. Can you imagine living in pitch black? Okay, so for example, like kind of right now, I'm a little bit scared filming this video right now, guys. I couldn't imagine living 20 years like this. I mean, it's extremely dark right now. You guys can barely see me. I would definitely go insane. I think this is worse than solitary confinement. I would be freaking out. So you know what? Let's turn the lights back on. Okay, that's a lot better. The police chief said that when they entered the basement, they were initially searching for drug gang members, but they stumbled upon Armando. The basement floor was covered in human feces, and the poor boy was very impaired and wasn't able to speak. It is believed that his parents decided to lock him up in the basement because they started to heavily drink alcohol, and they told his friends that they moved to another part in Brazil and that he's doing good. After he was rescued, he was taken to a psychiatric hospital in hopes that he can recover from this traumatizing event.
The police discovered 36-year-old Armando Bezerra de Andrade when they were on a drug raid Sunday evening. They accidentally entered a family home and discovered Andrade in a filthy, stinking basement.
Number 3 brings us to the basement murderer. Gary Michael Heidnick kidnapped, tortured, and raped 6 women, killing 2 of them while holding them prisoners in his basement in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Going back to November 25th, 1986, he abducted a woman, and by January 1987, he had kidnapped 4 other women. He held them all captive in the pit of his basement, where they underwent extremely violent forms of torture. One of the women died from a combination of starvation, torture, and an untreated fever. He dismembered her body and put her arms and legs in his freezer and labeled them as dog food. According to some rumors, he would ground up his first victim's flesh, mix it with dog food, and feed it to the other girls. His favorite form of torture was using electrical shocks, and he used to duct tape their mouths and stab them in their ears with a screwdriver. Once he was finally arrested, he tried to take an insanity plea, but thankfully he was sentenced to death by lethal injections. So we don't have to worry about this, crazy guy ever again. The House of Horror terrifies us in at number 2, Joseph Fritzl. Well, he appeared to be a well-respected family man and successful engineer. But what a lot of people didn't know was he began to abuse his 11-year-old daughter and decided to keep her locked up in his basement away from the outside world. He made his own large cellar basement underneath his home that had a reinforced door and soundproofing. That's where his daughter lived, without any daylight for the next 24 years. During her imprisonment, she was raped by her father over 3,000 times. She gave birth to 7 children, 7 incests. So I guess they became her siblings and her children at the same time. Yeah, confusing. 3 of those kids lived upstairs with him and his wife, while the others lived in the basement cellar. The last child died shortly after childbirth, but in April 2008, one of the daughters became seriously ill, so he was persuaded to take her to the hospital, where she managed to call the police. Joseph was jailed for life, and his House of Horrors has now been turned into 10 bungalow homes with the basements filled in with concrete. And in at number 1, we have a shadow person. A security guard was petrified when he heard a loud banging noises coming from the basement of a deserted football stadium. He decided to go down the dark staircase in order to investigate the suspicious noises, and he recorded the whole thing. When he panned his camera around, he saw a dark, shadowy figure quickly passing along some benches and then disappearing through the wall. And yeah, we have the footage for you guys. Take a look at this. I mean, come on, is this real life right now? The security guard didn't see this ghostly figure until after he reviewed the tapes. He said that the basement changing room door was being violently opened and closed by an unknown force inside of the room. The man was so terrified and stressed, so on the next day, he handed in his letter of resignation and found a different security job. You know what? Smart man. I would do the same thing if I were you, because hell no, I'm not doing that job.
Pretend we have Samara's death hole. I am talking about the movie The Ring, but I will admit that that sounded a bit suspicious. Firstly, I want to say that I absolutely love Reddit. Reddit is like an endless source of scary information from real people, so thank you Reddit, and thank you humans for contributing. Honestly, I don't know where Most Amazing Top 10 would be without Reddit. So in 2016, Colintendo posted on Reddit to say, I have the ring in my basement, and looking at the pictures, it literally looks like they do. They found a well under a trap door under 2 cement blocks. They lifted up the blocks and hello creepy death hole. Like seriously, who died down there? People on Reddit were freaked out. The post got over 8,000 upvotes. After all of the attention the hole got on Reddit, Colintendo gave us an update. They said, a friend told me I should throw a lifelike doll down there to show the kids when they act up. This is what happened when little Johnny wouldn't eat his vegetables. I think that's cruel. He also said, for visibility it is 8 feet deep, 4 feet filled with water. There is nothing else down there, no holes, no copeland pipes, no gates to hell. It's just a hole with water, nowhere to explore or spelunk. Still though, creepy hole in the basement. I don't like it. And something about the stone. Creepy. This person who found this hole had a premonition that it even existed long before they found it. Coming in at number 9, we have the railroad hole. This is an insane story. Imagine moving into a home and always having a weird feeling about your property. Alexandra Poulos of Lansdowne, Pennsylvania said she always knew there was something going on in her house that she didn't yet know about. She said she felt a presence. While her basement started breaking, she was very, very stressed, but when it opened up to reveal a massive hole, she was thoroughly creeped out. Long story short, she dug deeper into the hole and found a room 14 feet below. When they dropped a ladder down, they discovered that the room was actually part of an old underground railroad. Now Poulos is investigating the history history of the space and making structural repairs. She's convinced that there's a spiritual presence and she wants to know the full story. Are there ghosts of the railroad underneath her house coming out through a hole? What a sentence. Coming in at number 8, we have the sinkhole. In 2013, a man in Norwood, Cincinnati woke up to discover a 40-foot sinkhole in his basement. The hole was 10 feet wide and 40 feet deep. It seems like something had gone pretty wrong, obviously. Sinkhole. Honestly, have a look at it. This is what the homeowner had to say.
I mean, everything. Everything I had that was worth value is gone.
The house ends up being purchased off the owner by the city, who tore it down to repair the hole, so I guess it's kind of a silver lining, although they did lose out on their house for a while. Coming in at number 7, we have the Mirelurks. In 2019, the Ace of Finland posted this scary looking hole on Reddit's urban exploration subreddit. They simply wrote, "We found a deep hole filled with water in the basement of an abandoned factory," and well, I mean, that is a pretty accurate description. This actually looks like a Tomb Raider level filled with Harpoon Doom. Do you remember when you'd make Lara Croft swim down the spooky holes? Others said it looked like a place that would be full of Mirelurks from Fallout. One commenter wrote, "Seems like the beginning of a horror movie. Pair of explorers in an abandoned building stumble upon this flooded basement. Just as they turn around to leave, something grabs them by the ankle." Right? Coming in at number 6, we have this mystery hole. A YouTube video uploaded in December 2011 shows a guy investigating a very strange hole in his basement floor. At first, he shows the hole with the camera, it's covered over, but then he opens it up and pokes the camera down there, and it does look very, very deep indeed.
Yeah, so I guess I'll probably go down there eventually. But I don't know. It's kind of a small hole. So definitely a bigger person.
Like, we never actually get to the bottom of this spooky hole, and I would straight up freak out if this was in my home, because what's down there? Also, would you not worry about this damp open space being underneath your house? Like, I wouldn't structurally feel good about that, let alone the ghosts and ghouls. Coming in at number 5, we have the doorway to the abyss. 4 years ago, Gibbersman posted on R Creepy on Reddit. They simply wrote, "The hole in my basement," and then shared a link to this Imgur horror. Can you even imagine? To me, this looks like the lair of the Mothman or something. Some of the comments are reasonably on point. Max Powers 8988 said, "Sit in there with no lights on for 30 minutes while you conduct an EVP session." Another commenter said, this is Mr. Buzz Killington, they said, "You're that guy in the horror films that would insist that everyone stay together with the lights on, and if anything weird happened, you would just pack your bags and get into the car and drive back to Florida instead of wandering into the strange dark places alone." Exactly, I kind of feel what they're saying here, like, get in the hole or don't post a picture of it. Coming in at number 4, we have this very holy hole. Imagine finding a hole in your basement and then discovering it leads to an underground chapel that's been hidden for 100 years. I mean, I don't feel good about that. People do not have secret underground chapels for good reasons, do they? It's always like secret praying or ritual sacrifice or satanic cults. Here's a picture of Gareth amid the original hole, and here he is in the room at the end of it. Honestly, that crumbling cross on the floor really freaks me out. I don't like it. Coming in at number 3, we have the spider hole. Okay, I don't know what I dislike more, spiders or holes, but spiders that live in holes, that really takes the biscuit. With that in mind, this really is one of the most horrifying basements I've ever seen. Posted on R Creepy on Reddit by Uncle Drunky in 2018, they simply wrote, "The basement of a house I visited today," and then they posted this picture. I mean, can you even imagine? This is one big giant spider hole. I've never seen such thick cobwebbing in my whole life, and this is outrageous. Once again, I do love Reddit for the everyday stories shared and the everyday comments from everyday people who just make really good points. Blake Major said there is a 90% chance a human-sized spider is lurking down there. Honestly, I think you're right. Dank Fisherman said, "But you might get some epic loot for defeating it." That's true, but still, it wouldn't be enough for me. Coming in at number 2, who is Isaiah? It really isn't just the hole that is the scary thing in this basement. In 2015, a man and his brother discovered a horrible secret at a basement of an unoccupied home in Michigan. The siblings were house hunting when they entered the basement of a vacant property, only to be greeted with scary messages. Of the worrying scrawl on the walls was a set of creepy rules for somebody by the name of Joshua. They read 1. Stop reading your walls. 2. No watching Isaiah through the hole. 3. No writing or drawing on the walls. 4. If you don't like these rules, go to number 0. That isn't a number 0 though, but really that isn't the point. For me, the worrying thing is wrapped up in number 2. No watching Isaiah through the hole. I mean, hello, creepy. It isn't clear which hole this is talking about, but there is a peephole, a bunch of peepholes drilled in the staircase, so maybe he was watching Isaiah through there. Also written on the walls was stop watching me, so I've just about had enough of this creepy basement and the creepy holes. Finally, at number 1, this is a horrifying true story. We have the pit. This was truly awful. So Gary Michael Heidnik was a rapist and a murderer that kept abducted women chained up in a pit in his basement in North Philadelphia. Heidnik was given the name the People Collector as he abducted 6 African American women and held them prisoner in the pit. He killed 2 of them, and one of them was electrocuted in a hole in the basement filled with water. Among his victims were Josephina Riviera, Jacqueline Askins, Agnes Adams, Sarah Lindsay and Deborah Dudley. The latter 2 lost their lives in his house in the hellhole. Here is a horrible drawing of the pit. Honestly, how utterly vile. Luckily Heidnik was apprehended and sent to jail. So guys, that was the top 10 scariest holes found in people's basements. Which did you think was the scariest? Let me know in the comments section down below.
Starting us off at number 10 is the underground city. I would be so chuffed if I found an underground city in my basement, or like, what great value for money. Real estate is steep these days, you guys. Underground city, we need that. Anyway, in Turkey back in 1963, a homeowner knocked down a wall in his basement to find a hidden room. And then another, and then another, and then a whole network of tunnels. AKA what turned into Derinkuyu, one of the most impressive archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. Derinkuyu is an ancient multi-level underground proper city that could accommodate about 20,000 people and had a bunch of amenities too, like stables, cellars, chapels, livestock, and even running water from an underground river. It's believed the underground city was used by Christians as protection during the Arab-Byzantine Wars. It had about 8 levels, and damn, what a find this is. Like, honestly, like, kudos to whoever the hell found that. Kudos to you. You probably sold that for like $1 billion. Probably more. I hope you're enjoying your life on an island somewhere in the Caribbean. I wish I was you. Coming in at number 9 is The Box. Lorne Kaplan founded the company Free Home Cleanup, which offers free home cleanout services for hoarders. During one case of major hoarding, he was cleaning out the basement workroom of a farmhouse built sometime in the 1800s located in Hartsdale, New York. As he was cleaning, Lorne found a bunch of cans of paint, of stain, spackle, and so forth, but one can stood out to him. Inside one of the cans, he found the ashes of a deceased family pet. Like, I know people keep their relatives' ashes, but I didn't know cremating and keeping your pet's ashes was a thing. But the worst part was the ashes weren't even the current owners', so whose pet's ashes were they? How long had they been there for? Was it a sad situation where the pet died naturally and they just couldn't bear to part with it? Or did they accidentally kill the pet and burn the body so no one would ever find out? Like, many things could have happened, and I need to know what happened.
Dinner with Panera, freshly prepared with clean ingredients.
At number 8 we have the bunnies. Back in December of 2015 in Saukville, Wisconsin, 29 rabbits were found in the basement of an abandoned rundown barn. They were all in cages in horrible conditions, and one of them was even found just dead in its cage. Thankfully, the Wisconsin Humane Society removed all the rabbits, and after being examined, it was concluded that all of them had some kind of general or respiratory infection. Almost all of them also had scabs on their bodies and severe hair loss, meaning they had been neglected for a while in this dark environment. Sadly, there was little to no hope of finding the person who owned the barn or put the rabbits there because they were long gone by then, but thankfully, all the bunnies became adoptable after intensive caring and healing, so yay. I mean, there's a happily ever after, and thank God, because I was about to slap a because we do not abuse animals, not under my arch, no, not ever. Filling our number 7 slot is the renovation. Now, a few years ago, a woman living in Wisconsin decided to renovate her entire home, as you sometimes do. What had been bugging her for ages was the basement, so she decided to start with that first. When contractors came and started digging it up, they made a startling discovery. Hundreds and hundreds of human remains, including children's skulls, were found there, and the woman probably wanted to evaporate into the ground at that point. And I mean, fair enough, I would too. Turns out her house was built on top of an old burial ground, graveyard, and the remains were nearly 2 centuries old, so thankfully she was in the clear. With that being said, all the renovations had to stop, and it took her 15 months to get approval from the State Historical Society before restarting them. Honestly, damn, imagine wanting to renovate your house then finding a graveyard. Like, how does one even react to that? What? I know I'm smiling, but I'm not smiling on the inside. Now at number 6 is the utter snakery, and truly, honestly, you guys, the couple in this story got so snaked by life, I feel so bad for them. So back in 2009, a couple had just bought a home in Rexburg, Ohio, and were super excited about it because yay, new house, new life, new chapter, God knows what. But either way, their excitement was very short-lived. Within the first few weeks, they started finding a lot of snakes in their backyard, which he just couldn't understand. The area itself barely had any, so why were there so many in their yard alone? The couple also started hearing noises from under their floors and inside their walls, so they decided to investigate. They ended up removing a panel of sliding in their basement and were probably hoping to God they spoke parcel tongue when they saw what was inside. Dozens and dozens of snakes just started coming out of their wall, and oh, I just feel like they're on me. I don't like it, I don't like the feeling, and that's not even the worst bloody part. The couple also had a problem with their water system because it just tasted very oniony when it came out, and they came to find out that was from the snakes exuding this musk when they get scared. Well, A, BRB while I gag, and B, their only option was to either live there or spend $100,000 removing the nest, so they filed for bankruptcy and moved the hell out. Can you imagine? That just sucks so bad. Imagine buying a house, finding like a snake labyrinth, and being like, oh, well, guess we're on the streets now. Coming in at number 9 are the Cups. This is another horror story coming from Lorne Kaplan, our resident free home cleanup guru. He agreed to clean out the basement section of an old 3-story apartment in a fairly rundown neighborhood, so already we're expecting the worst here. Either way, he was thrilled to find the basement in pretty good condition, aka there was just not that much trash or litter on the ground, so I mean, the situation was workable. It makes it bearable at least. Anyway, all that excitement went down the bloody drain when he opened the cupboards and found 30 odd teacups filled with dead cockroaches. And it wasn't even that they all accidentally just died and fell into the teacups. Like, no, the owner was collecting dead cockroaches and storing them in these teacups in the basement. That is disgusting. Like, I can't. Like, if I was Lorne and someone wanted me to clean that and never warned me about that, I'd be so pissed. Like, the disrespect. Put some respect on my name. I'm done. I'm not even Lorne Kaplan. At number 4 are the teeth. This is the last one from Lorne on our list, but honestly, thank you for your service, and I'm sorry you had to see any and all of this. Now with this case, Lorne was in New Jersey cleaning out a home for an elderly woman whose husband had recently died. He was making his way through the house and then finally got to the basement, which was filled with cardboard boxes, which was pretty standard. As he was going through them, he found one that rattled around quite a bit, so he opened it up. Inside, he found dozens and dozens of dentures, loose teeth, and bridges. First of all, again, BRB while I gag, and secondly, the cherry on top was that they weren't the woman's or her late husband's. So whose freaking teeth were they? Why were they there? Whose are they? When were they are they dental records from people who were killed? Like, I need answers. Why is there a box of teeth in this woman's house? Whose teeth are they? Filling our number 3 slot is the doll. Now this one was shared by someone on Reddit who said this doll was discovered in the basement of an estate sale. The doll is really not what you'd imagine. It's extremely pale, the face and body is that of an old Asian woman, which is just weird in and of itself. You don't usually see an old doll at all. On top of that, the expression of the doll is just one of anguish, and it's just unsettling. Her teeth aren't all there, and her 2 index fingers were broken off as well. Like, at this point, I'd really prefer Annabelle over this. Like, I'm not doing this. She was found in a very tightly secured black box that was even tied up, indicating whoever had her beforehand really wanted the box to remain shut. Now the user claimed there was a name carved into the back of the doll's neck, and other users started commenting, daring the user to say the name into a mirror thrice to see what would happen. I don't know if they ended up doing it or not, but maybe don't listen to trolls on Reddit trying to get you killed. Just, you know, a little word of advice. Now at number 2 is The Lady. Posted by Redditor Robinson217 2 years ago, they shared that they used to volunteer with their local police department, and one day they found something equally disgusting and really sad. They raided a house that had been suspected to be abandoned for quite a while, and that a squatter was now maybe living inside of it. Now they cleared the ground floor and found nothing, and so they made their way to the basement. In the basement, they found the old lady who had owned the house, except she was dead. And not only was she dead, but her little dog had eaten her entire face. Like the skin from her hairline to her jawline to both her ears, like it was all gone. Thankfully, her eyeballs were still in the sockets, but other than that, it was just a skeleton in clothes. Honestly, I would have stopped volunteering at that point. Some things you just can't unsee. I wasn't even there, but I can't unsee that. And finally, at number 1 is the poem. This was shared by Reddit user Gizmo588, who said they used to live in an old house in the middle of nowhere in North Dakota. But when they first moved in, the user was exploring the house and went into the bedroom in the basement that was going to be theirs. Honestly, I'd be so pissed if my parents moved into a house and I got a bedroom in the basement. Like, no! I deserve better. Either way, in the bedroom they found a hand-painted poem in dark reddy brown paint that said, "I wrote a little poem. I wrote it on my wrist. I wrote it with a blade. I wrote it with a twist." Now if you don't get it by now, the person wrote that poem with his own blood. Turns out the user found out that the previous owner had committed suicide in the backyard of the house by cutting his wrists, and before him, an elderly couple had died in the house as well. And I'm sure you can imagine that family did not stay in that house very long after that, I assure you.
Coming into number 10, we have Samar as well. Have you guys seen the movie The Ring? If so, wouldn't you run and hide as far as you possibly could away from this basement? I mean, In 2015, Reddit user Colintendo shared a link to his Imgur saying, "I have the ring in my basement." And on closer inspection, yeah, he does. That's the ring's well right there in the basement. I mean, I would say, Colin, get out of there, bro, or she probably will come and kill you in 7 days. Coming into number 9, we have a whole kitchen. How well off do you have to be to discover an entire servant's kitchen in your house that you'd never even noticed until now? I mean, seriously. This is quite the discovery. This is exactly what happened to Archie and Philippa Graham Palmer as they explored their property in Wales. Graham Palmer, I mean, they sound rich, don't they? Archie said that the basement had been a dumping ground for years, and it is thought that the room lay unused for 100 years. Imagine having that much living space. Oh my goodness. The kitchen was found behind some old junk and was left virtually untouched, with pots and pans still on the walls and cookbooks on the shelves. From a kitchen in a basement to the basement of a restaurant with a sick sense of humor. At number 8,
before you buy a $1 million view like this, create a faceless YouTube automation channel first. In fact, this channel right here, Tech Zone, is earning over $1.5 million per year without showing their face. And I personally have 7 of these channels running on autopilot, creating passive cash flow for me and my wife. Now, this right here is a client of ours, Andrew, who just got his YouTube Creator Award from his faceless YouTube automation channel, earning over $14,000 a month. This right here is Arturo. He's earning over $4,300 per month in passive cash flow. And this right here is Dan, who just hit $26,000 in passive cash flow from his channel. Now, you're probably wondering, what is YouTube automation? How does this work? Well, it's very simple. We basically hire offshore contractors to film, script, and edit the videos for us. Then we upload them to the channel, and it creates a profit for us. So I'm gonna show you right over here in my office exactly how one of my YouTube automation channels look and how much revenue it's generating, so you can see that this works firsthand. As you can see right over here, I started this channel just over a year ago to show you that this is possible, right? $0 on March 21st, 2021. And as we go up here, we had a record day back in December of $981 in a single day. And this channel is generating me anywhere from
we have a creepy gathering of dolls. Redditor Gravity Boy posted, "Found this in the basement of a restaurant I went to last night." Now the restaurant in question turns out to be Hanny's in Phoenix, Arizona. One fellow Redditor looked at the picture and said, "It looks like Annabelle's reunion," which, to be honest, it totally does. It turns out that this is an art installation, but I really wouldn't want to be the one that interrupts this illicit miniature game of craps. I also hear that the restaurant has very interesting toilets in this location, but the dolls really freak me out. Coming into number 7, we have a 150-year-old signed photo of Abraham Lincoln. Can you imagine cleaning out your grandmother's basement to discover signed photographs of one of America's most famous presidents? On top of that, it was in an album with photos of other senators and cabinet members, and there were signatures. This is a piece of American history right here. So this is exactly what happened to a woman who appeared on British TV show The Antiques Roadshow. Presenter Wes Cowan valued the album at, wait for it, $100 $200,000, which is a pretty big basement find. Coming into number 6, we have a priceless art piece. A dusty old painting was found in a basement of a deceased elderly couple in New Jersey in 2016. The small painting was just 9 inches tall and was discarded as worthless, but it actually turned out to be a painting by celebrated Dutch artist Rembrandt. The painting, called The Unconscious Patient, was spotted by 2 eagle-eyed art dealers and sold for $870,000 at auction, which actually is very, very cheap for a Rembrandt, which have traditionally been going for millions. Imagine $870,000 in your basement. Whew. The painting dates back to the mid-1600s and has since been put on display at the Getty Museum. Coming into number 5, we have a 90-kilo alligator. In 2016, an alligator was discovered living in a basement by a repairman who was working in a man's house in Lansing, Illinois. The gator had apparently been living down there for 26 years when he was discovered. I mean, imagine keeping an alligator in your basement for 26 years. The reptile belongs to Charles Price, who said that he walked it in his garden and fed it chicken breast. The gator had grown to 6 feet long when he was discovered by the worker. He was later seized and taken to an animal shelter, but like, imagine being the repair guy going down to someone's house and finding a gator in their basement. Seriously. Anyone for severed puppet heads at number 4. Hurrah! So this is another Reddit classic. A Redditor posted that they found this horrifying array in their basement behind the furnace. Some of you may say, how did they not know that this was behind the heater, but some people on this list had no idea they were housing a full kitchen, so here we have an array of disembodied puppet heads tied together with strings. Hip hip hooray for the person who constructed this to scare the living bejesus out of future residents. Oh, great! At number 3, we have a mass grave. When new owners of a home formerly resided in by Benjamin Franklin moved in, they found the grim discovery of 1,200 bone fragments in the soil below their basement. The house on Craven Street in London had fragments of bone dating back to the exact time when Benjamin Franklin lived there in the 1700s. It turns out that one of the founding forefathers of America wasn't a murderer, he just let this house be used as a secret anatomy school at the time. Back then, dissecting bodies was illegal, so it was all in the name of science, which I can respect. Coming into number 2, this is really sad actually, we have prisoners and kidnap victims. It's really horrible, but often sickos use their basements to keep people captive. Often their hostages go unnoticed for sometimes decades. So this is exactly what Joseph Fritzl did. When she was just 18, Joseph Fritzl lured his daughter into the basement of their home in Austria and kept her there for 24 years. Unbeknownst to her, he had been building a secret lair to trap her in. To get to the cell in which his daughter Elizabeth was trapped in, Fritzl or anyone looking for the secret space had to cross 5 locked rooms. The cell had 2 sleeping areas, basic cooking functions, and a bathroom. Elizabeth gave birth to 7 children down there and was eventually discovered when one of the children fell ill and was allowed to go out to hospital. When police raided the home, they made the grim discovery in the basement. So I just wanted to end off this list with a really happy one at number 1. So this is good. Yeah, I know there have been things that have been valued at more, but imagine making this discovery. At number 1, we have $23,000 of cold hard cash discovered in a basement. A couple in Cleveland discovered $23,000 in cash hidden in a suitcase in the ceiling of their basement. The couple in their 30s were remodeling their home when they found the little green suitcase containing the money. The cash was dated between 1928 and 1934 and was found wrapped in wax paper with a newspaper article from the 1950s. The couple counted up all of the cash bundled into 20s and 50s and invested the money into their mortgage. I'm not sure that that's how I would spend a windfall of $23K. I don't know, how would you spend it if you suddenly found $23,000 in your house? What would you do with it?
We found Sprizzy through a Google search, pretty much. I was looking for a way to market our YouTube videos in a, I guess you'd call it a correct manner. Sprizzy's something completely different. What Sprizzy does is they have a network of places that they use your video as an ad. They put your video in front of the people that need to see it and that are going to come back and continue to consume your content. And man, it's been great. They're super responsive.
we're starting things off with the Baltic Sea UFO. In 2011, the Swedish deep sea diving team Ocean X picked up a strange sonar image while searching for a shipwreck on the floor of the northern Baltic Sea. This is the image here. A lot of people think it looks a bit like the Millennium Falcon. Totally agree. When the image got out, though, all kinds of tabloid newspapers started having a field day with it, saying the object looked like some form of technology, like a UFO, for example, or remnants of some kind of ancient civilization. The object has been described as approximately 60 meters in diameter, resting at a depth of around 85 to 90 meters. Now, while everyone was having fun imagining what kind of fantastical ancient underwater city could have existed or what alien species could have crash landed their ships, scientists looked at the image and were like, looks like it's most likely a natural formation, so that kind of sucks. But the UFO thing hasn't been totally ruled out, so that means it's a UFO, right? Next up we have eddies, which are basically the black holes of the ocean. Eddies are basically circular currents, sort of like a whirlpool, that form within the larger ocean currents. Eddies can be small or big, and when I say big, I mean some of these things can actually be seen from space, which is terrifying. Now, there's not as much mystery surrounding eddies as there is with actual black holes in space. Pretty obvious where you end up if you're dragged into one of these massive sized whirlpools, but arguably scarier too, because with a black hole, at least you can hope you'd end up in some new fantastical part of space. With eddies, you just drown. And that's the other horrifying thing about these massive sized ones. Nothing can escape, just like a black hole. Anything caught up in it gets sucked in. And if you're thinking you can just wait it out, well, maybe you can, but some of these whirlpools can last for hours, days, or in some cases even years. So good luck. Number 8, the Cuban underwater city. The discovery of the Cuban underwater city was made by a Canadian company named Advanced Digital Communications, or ADC, in 2001, using advanced sonar technology. The company identified a series of geometrical structures lying about 650 meters deep off the coast of Cuba. These structures looked to be symmetrical and arranged in a grid-like pattern, almost like the layout of a city. The team returned to the site a second time with a remote underwater vehicle which was able to retrieve more sonar images which were interpreted to be various structures which didn't seem like natural formations. Some suggested this was the remnants of a lost civilization maybe, or an ancient city submerged by rising sea levels, but many marine archaeologists and geologists thought these seemingly man-made structures could also, once again, be natural formations, and given how long it would have taken for a possible